Well, we're getting more sophisticated players. We're getting more of the public, which is becoming sophisticated. Worldwide, that number is 0.8%. In the United States, it's still 0.8% of people who own gold and silver coins and bullion. Mm-hmm. It's that low. The public is still not in these markets, not even close.
Yeah, there's
starting in Europe, but it's been going strong in places like Russia, India, China, like it always has. And then we've seen governments buying, such as Argentina, Mexico, of all places, been a buyer, and we had Mr. Chavez take delivery, and he did that just to put a thorn in their sides. And I think I think he realizes that he's going to die soon, and I think that was one of the compelling reasons for him to do that. And he's one of our subscribers.
Very good.
And we have in the gold secular bull market for the last 11 years about institutional investors who came in rather late. The bull market was already 5 to 6 years long by the time they started investing in gold. Do you think major institutional investors are in the silver market yet, or are they going to be late to that market? We've got companies like Apple who have billions of dollars in assets, and they don't own silver.
Well, they don't own any metals. They did at one time. Microsoft, I think, was the one through Bill Fleckenstein, had them in silver. But I think they've sold their positions. But, they don't want to know anything about anything except what they understand, and that's understandable. The problem is if you're going to make goo-gobs of money, you have to have it managed properly, because if you don't, there's no sense in making it. And I saw that happen through my business life so often. People were just giants at what they did, and they make lots of money, and then they go lose it. Mm-hmm. And, the only safe place to be today is gold and silver-related assets. That's it. As far as institutions being in the market, a handful. Institutions being short the market, big time. I mean, look at the average daily volume in the shares. Let's say the top 10 producing gold and silver shares. The average daily volume of shorting, betting the stocks are going to go down, runs around 40 to 45% a day. You know what's normal? 1 to 3%. And that's the hedge funds, institutions, and our dear government.
Yeah, it's amazing. You mentioned that only 0.8% of the people are involved in gold and silver because they're not paying attention. What is your timeline on this whole thing as it plays out? People are throwing numbers out there: $5,000 gold, $10,000 gold. What's your timeline when we actually have when the hyperinflation hits here in the U.S.?
Well, the eminent economist John Williams is the best at doing numbers I've ever seen.
Yeah, shadowstats.com is.
This guy is not a slouch. He's a Tuck scholar from Dartmouth, and he's the real deal. And I used to do all those numbers myself. And so I said to John, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to let you do them because you do them better than I do. And so what are we calling here? We're calling real inflation, not the government numbers that say gold's worth $2,500 an ounce. The real numbers tell us $8,700 per John. Mm-hmm. So I'll settle for that for the time being. But if we're going to have hyperinflation, there is no number. I mean, it could be $100,000 an ounce for what everybody knows. We don't know.
It's going to be such like in Weimar, Germany. People are going to drive up to the drive-thru at McDonald's and ask if they can lock in the price on their Big Mac before they get up to the drive-thru window. People don't understand what the implications are.
Well, they better have some junk silver. That's pre-65, dimes, quarters, and halves, 90% silver, and 1/10 ounce gold coins if they're going to do those kind of things. And I have all of those things.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on, say, copper? For example, a lot of people who don't have the money put away in order to invest in even a 1 ounce gold, a silver coin, because in California you have to pay tax on that sort of thing, which really does, I think, dampen the market. Is copper an option to store other than the fact that it's bulky? Base metals generally?
It's a nightmare to store.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be there. You have to find a way to get involved in gold and silver. And at the lower levels, it's through coins. Mm-hmm. And there is no other way. And why go to another market when you get the biggest bull market in history in gold and silver?
You mentioned, again, that 0.8%, and I love that stat, of people not paying attention. And I had an interesting conversation this morning with a friend of mine who makes a lot of money in the high-tech industry. And I mentioned to him, I said, did you hear about the National Defense Authorization Act that Congress just passed? And he goes, no, what is it? And I said, well, in there, it basically says that the military can arrest U.S. citizens on American soil. And he goes, well, they can't do that. And I said, well, they are doing it. And he goes, well, Obama won't pass that. And I said, well, yes, he will. And he goes, it's against the Constitution. And I said, I know it is. What are your thoughts, Bob? I know I heard you on InfoWars recently on this.
Well, I think it's pretty simple. Nothing's going to happen until after the next election, even though they got it in place. I say this with great vehemence. Recently given $1,000 to the Ron Paul campaign, and I'm challenging anybody who's listening to do the same thing, because if Ron Paul and people like him are not elected, the President of the United States, and in Congress for others to help, then you're doomed. And you can take that to the bank if it's still there.
Yeah.
This is your last chance. And if you don't get this man elected, who's a statesman, who understands everything that we understand about what's going on in the economy in the world, if we don't get him in there, we're screwed.
I agree. What is that going to mean for the average U.S. citizen if he doesn't get in?
Well, they might live in one of those camps, or they might go to Gitmo and be tortured and thrown in the swamp so the alligators can eat them. These people don't understand what they're dealing with here. They see all these pretty people on television debating, good educations, lots of money, with the exception, of course, of Ron Paul, and they look wonderful. They've got $6,000 suits, and they're nothing but criminals. And people don't want to believe that. Well, you better believe it, ladies and gentlemen, and you better contribute to Ron Paul, because if you don't, and he doesn't make it, you're liable to end up in one of those camps by saying, well, gee, Mr. Obama got reelected again. This is the future, of course. Got reelected again, and I don't like him. I think he did this, that, and the other thing wrong, and all of a sudden you feel somebody grabbing you by the back of the neck, and you're being thrown into a truck, taking to one of the government, there's 600 of them, internment camps. And then they'll decide there how dangerous you are. They might keep you there, or they might send you down to Guantanamo to be tortured and executed. I mean, this is real.
It is.
These people are absolutely psychotic. They're crazy.
We
stupid.
We actually have some customers who are not only fairly wealthy, but very savvy and are paying attention to what's going on, who have in the last year or so actually gone out and gotten passports and citizenship in other countries, like Panama or Uruguay, because of what they've seen coming. Is it going to come to that for a lot of us, you think?
Absolutely. If you don't elect Ron Paul, it will. I don't live in the United States. I left a number of years ago because the government threatened me, and that's not the first time. And I haven't been back since, and have no intention of going back.
You're probably
I know lots about lots of countries, and needless to say, I speak several languages. And I might come back if Ron Paul gets elected. It all depends on what happens.
Great. Well,
but you've got to support this man. He desperately needs your money. He does not have J.P. Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, et cetera, bankrolling him. The bad guys do.
Right.
We have to bankroll him, and we have to make sure he gets into office.